now is the time in our service where we enter into our meditation. And today I'm going to be reading a meditation. It's a Buddhist meditation, and it is called I Am Home. So I invite you now to just gently close your eyes and just allow yourself to just breathe naturally. And today we're going to practice connecting with our present moment experience. Just allowing your chair or the floor to support you, to be alert yet also relaxed. And let's just begin by feeling the contact between your body and whatever surface is supporting you. Just allowing yourself to rest in this place and just returning to this moment of here and this moment of now. Just inviting whatever parts of yourself that may be still dispersed to just come back to this moment and to settle in this moment. Just now setting the intention to come home to yourself and to be present for yourself. Knowing and acknowledging that you deserve this care, that you are precious and unique, and there is no one else who brings the precise combination of gifts that you bring. Just allowing yourself to arrive here as fully as you can in this moment and to welcome the many parts of yourself home. Home in the here and the now. Begin to feel yourself settling into the home that's inside of you. The place of your strength and wisdom and clarity. A place that is trustworthy and capable of providing you refuge in any storm. Just continuing to stay with the awareness of your body's sensations, the sounds you may hear, and your breathing, the breath. And as we prepare to go into the silence, I invite you to affirm the following silently to yourself. I have arrived. I am home. I have arrived. I am home. And as we go into into the silence. Maybe you wish to continue to repeat that silently to yourself, or just allow yourself to feel those words. Whatever works best for you, whatever you were called to do, as we enter into our moment of silence. As we return to this present moment, arrived back in this present moment, realize and acknowledge that you are home in yourself, just as you are. I am home in myself, just as I am. And I leave you with the following words today in this meditation. Arrived, arrived. At home, I am at home, dwelling in the here and dwelling in the now, solid as a mountain, free as a white cloud. The door to no birth and no death is open, free and unshakable. For I have arrived, and I am home. And so it is. Namaste. Okay, so today is our fourth and final in our Mastery of Love series. And I'm going to say, I'm going to kind of miss this one a little bit. I was kind of looking at the book and thinking, God, could I really drag this one out a little bit longer? But the book's a little short, so, I tried to do the best I could. But I've always enjoyed the study of Don Miguel Ruiz's teachings. And I guess it means that we'll actually have to delve into another one of his books at some point. Yes. We won't do the Four Agreements, though, because I know that one's been done a lot, but there are more. Victory and I were talking about those before the service. But today I want to talk a little bit about healing. Now, there's likely not anybody that's in this room today or watching us online that hasn't suffered some kind of an injury to the body at some point. I mean, I know I got enough scrapes and scars on my legs from riding my bike as a kid, I can't even begin to count. But whether it's a cut, it's a burn, it's a scrape, we've all been there at some point, some kind of injury. And it's also likely that we went in and we put a little bit of medication on it and bandaged it. We did something to help the healing process to kind of come along a little bit. But these are typically some of the more minor injuries, right? These little scrapes and cuts and things like that. Those types of things that we can just likely treat at home. But we know that if a wound looks too serious, we head to the doctor, right? We're like, I got to go to the ER. I got to get some attention on this thing. And I remember my time in the Air Force, and I served as a medical technician while I was in the Air Force. And I did a couple of rotations through the ER when I was there, and people would come in and they would have some pretty serious wounds sometimes. The doc didn't just pour a little bit of peroxide on it and say, okay, bye-bye, go home. But sometimes the doc in order to help it heal, he or she would also make the wound appear even sometimes larger, kind of cut away some of the dead skin or whatever needed to be done, and the wound would look a little bit larger than what it was when they came in. But the doctor had a reason for doing that. They knew that they were creating space for the wound to heal when they did that. And that by doing that, they would leave room for this healing process to enter and to begin. But this is with the physical body, right? We've got more than just a physical body, don't we? We've also got something called the emotional body. And we can't see the wounds on the emotional body with our physical eyes. It'd probably help us a little bit if we could, right? Be like, oh, that's where I need healing. Hey, that's where I need to work on. We don't always see the wounds on the emotional body with our physical eyes. And as a result, we aren't always so quick to immediately tend to those wounds that are sometimes inflicted upon it. Sometimes they close up, and they appear to heal, but sometimes they close up with an infection trapped inside of them. Sometimes maybe even perhaps they close up over old scar tissue. Other wounds that weren't properly treated, therefore preventing those emotional wounds from healing sufficiently. Whatever the case, they weren't allowed to properly heal, and they're still here. And some of them are even festering, begging for our attention, begging to be healed. And like the doc in the ER, we must provide them with the attention that they need. And to do this, though, we're going to need to open them up. We can't just close over them and hope for the best. We're going to need to open up those wounds. We're going to need to reveal those wounds and open them up so that they can begin to heal. Now, in his book, The Mastery of Love, Don Miguel Ruiz tells us, he says, we need to open the wounds and clean the wounds. Use some medicine and keep the wounds clean until they heal. How are we going to open the wounds? We are going to use the truth as a scalpel to open the wounds. 2,000 years ago, one of the greatest masters told us, and you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But notice he said we're going to use the truth as a scalpel. So what does that mean exactly? Well, he tells us, he says, the truth is like a scalpel because it is painful to open our wounds. The wounds in our emotional body are covered by the denial system we have created to protect those wounds. When we look at our wounds with the eyes of truth, we can finally heal these wounds. So in the case of the emotional body, it begins with the scalpel, and the scalpel being the truth. So I want to tell you a story today, and it's a story about a girl who couldn't sing, and we're going to call her Mary Sue. Well, Mary Sue learned when she was still in elementary school that she could not sing. Her music teacher was holding tryouts for one of the solo parts in the Christmas play. And Mary Sue, she was really excited about this, about trying out for one of these roles, because she always loved running around the house singing. She would sing to her dolls, she would sing to her dog and her cat and her parents, anybody who would listen, Mary Sue would sing. And her parents would always look at her so fondly and tell her, they'd be like, Mary Sue, you've got such a beautiful voice. Thank you so much for sharing your music with us. So Mary Sue decides, she's like, I'm going to take this a step further, and I'm going to try out for the Christmas school play. And she agrees she's going to take her gift out to the world, as much of the world as the elementary school cafeteria would hold, right? So she shows up for tryouts. She closes her eyes and she begins to sing, and she just lets the music carry her off, her beautiful voice filling up the room. Well, she finishes her song and she opens her eyes and she looks around because all she hears is silence. And she sees that several of the kids have their hands over their ears. And the teacher has this dismayed look on her face, and Mary Sue can't quite tell what that look is, but it makes her feel uncomfortable. And the children suddenly begin to laugh and point to Mary Sue, and they're like, you can't sing, you can't sing. And from that moment forward, Mary Sue stops singing in front of others because, well, she can't sing after all. Why does she know this? The kids told her so. So she finds as she gets older, however, that she still enjoys being around music and even singing, sometimes when she's in the privacy of her own home. But she enjoys music even if it's just kind of hanging out in the background, so to speak. So she gets herself this volunteer gig. She's like, I'm going to get myself this volunteer gig. And this is one that allows her to usher at the local theater. That she can at least still hear this beautiful music from time to time from other people. And one day she's behind the stage after the show is ended, and she's picking up the last remaining pieces of garbage that she can find on the floor, and she begins to sing some of the lyrics from the show, thinking she's the only one in the auditorium. She suddenly realizes she's not alone because she hears clapping. And she looks around and she sees the producer of the show standing close by, and the producer goes, I heard you're singing, so I had to come and find out who it was. And Mary Sue looks at the producer. She says, I am so sorry for that. I apologize. I know that sound must have been terrible to you. I'm sorry. I'll let you get back to your duties now. And the producer's like, what? What are you talking about? You have one of the most beautiful voices I have ever heard. And the conversation moves on from there. And before long, Mary Sue is a star. She's in these shows and she's dominating the covers of magazines and newspapers. And people can't stop talking about how beautiful of a voice Mary Sue has. And people are baffled when they hear their story. The story about a young girl who once thought she couldn't sing. Now, it didn't go from just point A to point B for Mary Sue. Sure, she eventually ended up a star, but there was a journey for her in between. No matter how good the producer initially told her she sounded, she still couldn't allow herself to believe that at first. The first few practices left her wondering why she'd even attempted to make herself think that she could sing. Why was she even thinking that? She'd tell herself from time to time. The producer had already heard her and determined that she could sing, and this producer knew the sound of a good voice when they heard one. But for Mary Sue to become the star that she'd always been, she had to face a very important truth. She had to realize that what may have been true, or at least felt true, back in elementary school was no longer true. She had to now view her singing through a new perception. What may have been true in elementary school wasn't necessarily true now. You see, Mary Sue didn't realize it at the time, but she sang opera. And when she became a star, she became an opera star. It just so happened that some of the kids in her class didn't understand why her voice had been so high when she sang. And due to their very own perspectives, they had surmised that she just had the inability to sing. It wasn't something that they were used to hearing at that point. So they concluded that she just couldn't sing. And maybe that was true then, at least in their minds. But did it really make it true? And even if it was true then, is it still true now? Now, Mr. Ruiz tells us, he says, the truth is relative in this world. It's changing all the time because we live in a world of illusions. What is true right now is not true later. He also says almost everything in this world of illusion is a lie. That is why I ask my apprentices to follow 3 rules for seeing what is true. The first rule is, don't believe me. So I bet you all thought that I was going to say, hey, you need to take the minister's word as the gospel, as the only truth that there is, right? Or maybe it was your teacher or your mentor or Mr. Ruiz, whoever it was. You probably thought I was going to say, this is the way it is. But this is where choice enters the picture. Because you always have a choice to look at spiritual teachings or other things in your life almost as like a buffet. You walk up to it, and just like a buffet of food, you're welcome to take what you like and what works, and you're welcome to leave the rest there on the buffet table. Because you see, my intuition is not your intuition. As a result, you don't have to believe me. You can, but you don't have to, because my truth isn't necessarily your truth. Something might be true for you or for me, but that doesn't mean that it's true for you. You know, one of you may stand here and sing, and I'm not talking about victory, just so everybody knows. I thought about that when I was over there. But you know, I may think that somebody singing in here hurts my ears, and I may tell you that, but that doesn't make it true. The second rule is, I should have had Pete do a little drum roll. Shh. There we go. Don't believe yourself. Now it's starting to get real in here, isn't it? You may be thinking, well, wait a second, Evin. Okay, you just told me not to believe you or other teachers. Now you're telling me to not believe myself. Who am I supposed to believe? Well, let's put a few stipulations on this. So I mentioned last week about some of the things that we tell ourselves or due to our conditioning, right? Condition that, has often happened when we were small children and sometimes so long ago that we don't even necessarily remember. At least we think we don't remember because the subconscious does. And this is what Mr. Ruiz says in the book. He says, don't believe yourself when you say you are not good enough, you are not strong enough, you are not intelligent enough. Don't believe your own boundaries and limitations. Don't believe you are unworthy of happiness or love. Don't believe you are not beautiful. Don't believe whatever makes you suffer. Don't believe in your own drama. Don't believe it because it isn't true. And he goes on to say, open your ears, open your heart, and listen. When you hear your heart guiding you to your happiness, then make a choice and stick to it. But don't believe yourself just because you say so, because more than 80% of what you believe is a lie. It isn't true. Don't believe yourself. And now it's time for the third rule. Drum roll again, please. Don't believe anyone else. Okay, so first I said not to believe me or one of these other teachers. Then I said not to believe yourself. Now I'm saying not to believe anybody else. And what I ask here is that please don't kill the messenger here, because this is coming from Mr. Don Miguel Ruiz, not me. So remember that. And I go so far as to say that I believe Mr. Ruiz, but he told me not to, so here we are. But I do digress a little bit. What he does mean when he says, or what does he mean when he says not to believe anybody else? Yeah, could be. Yeah, make a choice. Oftentimes, the wounds to our emotional body are caused by believing someone else. And as a result, we tend to look to others for our acceptance, for different types of confirmation, and for love. And as a result, it can sometimes be difficult to see things clearly, as they truly are. So I'm going to suggest here to not believe other people until some of those emotional wounds are healed a little bit. Why? Because then you won't need that confirmation from other people. We don't need something outside of here to come in and rescue us. And Mr. Ruiz tells us, he says, you create your own dream of heaven. No one can create it for you. So we don't need others to confirm the truth of who and what we really are. We don't need anyone else to tell us that we are these beautiful spiritual beings that are not only worthy of love, but are love. This wonderful spiritual being that is capable of so much and even then some. There is nothing that needs to be explained to anyone else. We don't need confirmation of the truth of who we are or the truth of what is true for us, right? I mean, sure, we all have our own perceptions, and we all have our own opinions, and we all have our own truths in any given moment. But that doesn't make them true for everybody else. So somebody I know that's in my life holds very traditional beliefs when it comes to God, and when it comes to church. And that's okay, because that is what is true for her. But the unfortunate thing is that she doesn't agree with unity. And she just can't stop herself from telling me so. She loves to remind me that it's not the right way and that in her own words, God is coming again and sinners will be punished. And I'm not going to argue with her because that is her truth. And that's okay. But it doesn't mean that her truth is my truth. You know, and I shared some of what this person has recently said to me with a minister friend of mine. And she says, I'm glad that you don't believe that you're this sinner who's going to be punished, that you don't believe any of that. And I told her, I said, well, of course not. My walk with God, or whatever name you use for God, is my own. And that is what is my truth. So I hope that you remember today to always stick with your own truth. For mine is not yours, and yours is not mine. Your truth is yours, and that is something that nobody else can ever take away from you. Namaste. And Pete and Victory, real quick before you come back up, I'm going to have Denny come in and just give a quick update on Youth Ed. So let's get her real quick. Raimi, can you look around the corner and see if she's there? I would tell some good jokes, but I'm all out of jokes now. And, yeah. Ask what? Does anybody have any big plans this afternoon? Yeah, stay cool. I know, those storms, we've had some storms in Wisconsin lately, and so we hear that this storm is coming through yesterday evening, and Benny and I prepare because what was it last week? There was the one with the tornadoes or whatever. So we're gathering all our stuff to get ready to take into the basement, and it comes through, and they're talking about on the weather, like how major of a storm it is. And we're like, well, that was like a little rain shower in Texas. What? Okay, anyway. So, Denny, come on up. I'm going to introduce again Denny Ballish for those of you who may not have had the pleasure of meeting Denny yet. Denny is our new Youth Ed Director, and she's going to talk just a little bit about the Youth Ed program and just kind of let you know what she's doing back there. And Denny, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Well, we're rebuilding after the pandemic, and slowly but surely the children are returning. I have revitalized the space. So if you haven't seen the space upstairs, I would recommend you come up and check it out. It was a lot of work, but a lot of fun to re-envision the space, and the children are loving it. Why do I do this work? I do this work because I love to be with children, and I love to be someone who's a light, to children and families in this world. And it's such a wonderful experience to be with the children and to work with the families. I'm so blessed that Unity of Madison has a youth and family ministry program. It's just vital. And I use living curriculum, which is allowing the children to live into real life stories and issues and apply Unity principles to that. They're just so filled with light and love, these little ones. They just fill my heart every week. And I'm envisioning growing the program, and so obviously I can't do it alone, and I've had some lovely volunteers that have been able to help so far. If you're interested or called at all to consider being a classroom assistant, please let me know. There's other ways to support the youth program, so if you're at all curious or would like to learn more, feel free to just introduce yourself to me, and feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And do stop by and say hello. Thank you all.